But let's talk about Jeremy Hunt, let's talk about Sadiq Khan, let's talk about the Labour Party and indeed what election time may be coming up, whether it's November, whether it's October. Theo Usherwood is here, political commentator. Theo, very good morning to you, welcome.
Very good morning to you, Mike.
Nice to talk to you. Let's kick off, shall we, with Jeremy Hunt. We've just had Alberto Costa on, the MP for South Leicestershire, basically saying the same thing as the front page of the Daily Telegraph. As sure as night follows day, we're told, Labour will put taxes up. Well, as I said, I mean, it's a bit rich coming from the party that has got the highest tax burden on us since the Second World War, isn't it?
Yes, and there's this huge frustration on the Conservative backbenches from people like Alberta, who are furious that Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt haven't done more right now before the election to cut taxes. They'd like to see an emergency budget, of course, where there are tax cuts brought in. But Rishi Sunak has decided that he wants to be Mr. Prudent, Mr. Sensible, and hold off any tax cuts. And you're quite right to say this is a Conservative government. We've had a Conservative government for 14 years. And yet here we are with the highest tax burden since World War II. Now, Jeremy Hunt, in this speech where he's going to be criticising Labour this morning, saying, as you rightly say, that tax rises with Keir Starmer will happen as sure as night follows day, will also be promising that after the election there will be tax cuts if the Conservatives win power. But yes, you're right to say there is huge amounts of frustration that Rishi Sunak and Mr. Hunt just haven't done more before the election to ease the pressure on people in terms of cost of living.
So do you think it's more likely that they'll hold out tax cuts as a kind of a thing to sort of dangle in front of the electorate rather than giving them something before? Please vote for us and we'll give you some money back.
Yeah, but of course we've had double-digit inflation. They've had to bring in the Bank of England's had to bring in interest rates. And what Rishi Sunak, this is their argument, by the way. You can agree with it or you don't have to agree with it. But their argument is that if they'd brought in tax cuts too early, then all it would have done was increase inflation because people have had more money in their pockets and they'd gone out and spent it. And with that high inflation, which was it's north of 10% at one point for a few months, would have actually just continued. And that's why they decided to actually just try and hold their horses a little bit with it rather than go ahead straight away. But you're quite right to say this is about promises. It's about dangling carrots in front of the electorate to say, if you vote for us next time, you're going to get tax cuts, versus, of course, what we were hearing from Keir Starmer yesterday in terms of a great big new publicly owned energy company costing £8.3 billion of closing the loophole on non-DOMs. This was part of his 6 pledges, so you could end up we could have 40,000 more hospital appointments to cut NHS waiting times. That's the dividing line that they're the Tories are trying to draw before we go to the polls, October, November time.
Right, and I was going to ask you how Keir Starmer's sort of 6-step programme has gone down, whether with the not so much the Westminster bubble, but with the electorate, with Labour Party voters, with people who are still kind of undecided. I mean, we reported on it yesterday, of course, and I mean, it didn't exactly set the heather on fire. It wasn't exactly, something that you could go, oh my God, isn't that great? Like a revolutionary guy's going to come in and he's going to do all this stuff. It was pretty bland, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of his problem. I mean, Keir Starmer has been accused of being a copycat of Blair by bringing in this 6 pledge card. It's actually watered down considerably on his 5 missions, which were announced a couple of years ago. But he doesn't deliver it in the same way as Tony Blair delivered his pledges back in 1997, which of course led to that landslide, where Tony Blair was much more, came across as much more affable, you'd say, to the voters. He could appeal to Tory voters. And, take the polls, Keir Starmer, the polls say that he's going to be, winning a similar landslide when we have that general election. But as you rightly say, that he hasn't set the heather on fire. And in many ways, you might say, if you're in the leader's office this morning and you're with Keir Starmer this morning, as long as people understand what he wants to do, rather than get too excited, what he doesn't want to do is to is to put the fear of God into Conservative voters, that if they vote Labour, they're taking a risk. So if people see it and they see it, this is their hope, as something that's rather sensible, down the middle of the road, nothing too crazy, then actually that's no bad thing. What he doesn't want is the left of the Labour Party coming out and saying it's amazing, because that will invariably create a situation where most voters will think, well, I'm not quite sure about this guy. Let's hold off voting for him. What he wants to do is he really wants to appeal to voters out there in the country who are left the Labour Party in 2019 to say, look, it's safe to come back. Jeremy Corbyn's been banished. I'm in charge, and it will be a sensible Labour government that will be careful with your money, but at the same time will invest. But in truth, Mike, he doesn't have a load of cash. There's no cash down the back of the sofa in the Treasury.
No.
He's run out of money. He may have the majority, but he's going to have to be careful. Rachel Reeves is going to have to be careful in terms of how they spend that money, because there's not an awful lot around.
No, I think so. And I think you can count the number of sensible people in the Labour Party on one hand, can't you? Because have a look at Sadiq Khan today coming out and saying that Donald Trump is a racist, a sexist and a homophobe, and he's encouraging the party to call him out on it. I mean, why would he do that?
This is, if you don't mind me saying, this is really crazy politics from Sadiq Khan, because there's a very good chance that Donald Trump is going to be in the White House come November. If you look at the polls, what's happening in America, and there's a very good chance that Keir Starmer is going to be in number 10, and there's a very good chance that David Lammy is going to be in the Foreign Office. Now, you can understand the politics from Sadiq Khan's point of view, and of course, they've had run-ins. There's been a long-running head-to-head between the two of them. But at some point, Labour's got to get serious, because America, like it or not, is our closest ally. And they've got to be able to find a way of working together. Now, if you've got the most senior elected, at the moment, Labour politician describing what the person who could be the most powerful man in the world as a racist and a homophobe, what's David Lammy got to do?
Right.
How's he going to try and win over? How's he going to say to, when he goes over to Washington, sorry, I'm really, really sorry, my colleagues been so rude about you, Mr. Trump. I'm very sorry about it, but please give me an audience, listen to what I've got to say on all these important issues, like Ukraine, like China, like what's going on in the Middle East. Donald Trump's just going to run him out of town.
Yeah, of course. Exactly right. And whether he likes it or not, unfortunately, Mr. Khan, I've got some bad news for him. You know, the London mayor's job isn't quite as big as being president of the United States of America.
Yeah, but there's also, yes, being London mayor isn't quite as big as that. But there's also, Mike, just worth, when you have this quite polarised politics, it's worth remembering that for Sadiq Khan, there is a political capital in trying to double down and oppose yourself to Donald Trump. That he gets something from that. It's not just about standing up for himself as the London mayor. It's also about saying to voters out there, this is what I stand up for. I'm opposed to Donald Trump. Be opposed to Donald Trump with me. The problem is that this country very soon could have to do serious business on really serious issues, like the future of Europe, like Ukraine, like what's going on in the Middle East with Donald Trump. And Keir Starmer and David Lammy are going to have to find a way of getting in the room with him. And if Sadiq Khan at every turn is trying to make political hay by criticising Donald Trump, it's very difficult to see why Mr. Trump and his advisors, who are looking at being in the White House in a few months' time, would give them the time of day. And that's not in the interest of the British people, I don't think. I may be wrong, but I don't think it's in the interest of the British people if our Prime Minister can't go over to America and sit down with the President of the United States, and that may very well be the case.
Yeah, exactly right. Theo, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Theo Usherwood there, political commentator.